Hey, everybody. This is the Sports File, a 35-year reboot. My name is Sean Barkley, and this is going to be episode number 2. We're going to talk about the Russell Wilson saga. Are the Nuggets the best team? Tottenham a huge win, plus a great restaurant we tried in Denver, Point Easy. All right, kicking it off, topic number 1. So Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson spent 2 seasons here with the Denver Broncos. I have to preface this as saying I was a huge Russell Wilson fan, right? He, to me, was just such a great quarterback when he was in Seattle. You didn't really hear a lot about Russell Wilson up in Seattle because they're the team stuck up in the Northwest. But over the course of the years that he played there, went to 2 Super Bowls, should have won two, besides that boneheaded play versus the Patriots where they had the best running back at the time and decided to throw it. But he did win a Super Bowl the year before, and that was just showing his perseverance, how great he is. And so I was a huge fan, and I think the city of Denver as well was such a huge fan of Russell Wilson when they got the news of him signing. So if we go back in time, March 8th, 2022, the trade is announced, breaks on Twitter that the Denver Broncos have traded to Seattle 5 draft picks and 3 players for Russell Wilson. I think there was immediate excitement. I remember driving around Denver at the time, coming back from work, and it really was, people were just talking about it. It was a buzz that, hey, we've got another quarterback. We've got a great top 10 quarterback in the league. Russell's going to take us back to the Super Bowl. And we're going to be, we're off and running with championship teams for years to come, potentially. Then, the same day, Aaron Rodgers decides to stay in Green Bay. Now, why is this important? If you go back in time, the Broncos at that same year had decided to part ways finally with Vic Fangio. And they had decided to go from a defensive minded coach in Vic to Nathaniel Hackett, who was an offensive coordinator with the Green Bay Packers. Nathaniel Hackett is came out, as we've learned later, is a best friends essentially with Aaron Rodgers, and so you can see where the Broncos were thinking. And at the time, they were thinking that we're going to get a Nathaniel Hackett, and then Aaron Rodgers, who was sort of saying, "I don't really want to stay in Green Bay. Maybe it's a change of scenery that I need at that time." He'll naturally come. There'll be a trade executed that brings him there. That falls through, and on the same day the Denver Broncos announce they've traded for Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers decides to stay in Green Bay. So really what happened was Rodgers, if you think about the chronological timeline, Roger makes a decision, I'm staying with Green Bay. So what does Denver have to do? They have to respond by going to plan B, which is Russell Wilson. Now, he comes into town. Training camp goes, he's here. He's all about Denver, loves Denver. He's showing up at Nuggets games. He's showing up at Rockies games. And I think the city is really trying to get the same excitement they had when Peyton Manning came to Denver. September 1st, Broncos decide to sign Russell Wilson to a 5-year extension, and this is going to be worth up to $245 million. Now, this is where I think the one of the first head scratching moment occurs, right? At that moment, the season hasn't even started. He has yet to play it down for the Denver Broncos. And he had 2 years remaining on his existing contract. Now, common sense would say, hey, we think we're getting a great player in Russell Wilson. We think we are. His stats were still pretty good. He had one that last year in Seattle. His numbers had came down slightly, but Seattle was in a potential quote unquote rebuild at that point. They didn't really necessarily have the talent. A lot of players had moved on, like Marshawn Lynch, and some defensive players that really made them the Legion of Doom. They all decided to move on. And so you could think that Seattle maybe he had a down year because they were rebuilding and they just didn't have the talent. But then again, you have to ask yourself a question: why was the rush to sign him? Everything that's been out there that you've read about, it never once mentions Russell Wilson said, I want to trade to Denver, and by that, I want a contract extension. That never got out. And there is a fairly leaky ship coming out of the Russell Wilson camp. We've seen through the years various things will get out about Russell Wilson, but that is something he did not do, right? So you really do question why did they sign him up for that? So we all know how the season goes his first year. It's not great. Nathaniel Hackett is a complete disaster as a head coach. It's clear, really, by week two that this guy doesn't even know how to manage the clock. They have to bring in a clock expert and Jerry Roseberg to help out, and they're not great. They're just not great at all. He totally has to step back. A lot of people are saying, is Russell Wilson washed? It would be unprecedented because to see numbers that he was throwing in Seattle as a top 10 quarterback to suddenly just fall off the board at the age of 33, it'd be unprecedented. But we also, through the season, started hearing rumblings about, hey, who is Russell Wilson really? What kind of a teammate is it? You had former teammates in Richard Sherman, Marshawn Lynch come out and really talk about, like, hey, this guy really isn't all that he's cracked up to be. Just weird behavior by Russell Wilson. You're on a team, you're the leader of the team. The quarterback is absolutely the leader. And when you think about it, you're really trying to struggle. Like, why isn't this guy communicating with his teammates? Why isn't he giving out his phone number? Why is he kind of an enigma in the locker room? And why doesn't he hang out with his teammates? It's just weird behavior. To each their own, it's fine, but usually you hear these stories, for example, of John Elway hanging out in the locker room with the teams back in the day. He's playing cards, going out with these guys, being one of the guys, and he at the time was a top three quarterback in the league, if not the top. And so Russell to come in with a quote unquote entourage, his family was at training camp, we saw, got a private parking space, a private office, just a little bit of kind of diva type attitude that Russell really brought. So, season's a disaster. We know where Russell's headed. It's not great. And so they decide to cut bait in December. Nathaniel Hackett doesn't even make a full year with the Denver Broncos. And the Broncos go ahead and hire on February 6th of 2023 Sean Payton, arguably one of the greatest minds out there offensively. Huge success with New Orleans. Comes in, is hired as the head coach of the Denver Broncos. Now, Sean Payton, a lot harder of a coach than Nathaniel Hackett. Wants his offense run a certain way, needs to happen a certain way. And if it doesn't happen that way, he's all about timing, less improv from like Russ. If it doesn't happen, it tends to go sideways, right, with his players. And you could start seeing some tension. They were playing better. Yes, Russell threw up great numbers. I think statistically, you look, he still came in as a top 10 quarterback for the league from a touchdown to interception ratio. But it was not working. You could see on the sideline Sean Payton really getting into Russell Wilson's face and really getting into it with him on the sidelines and seeing him, I want the play run a certain way. And if you watch Russell Wilson, it's typically he gets the ball, takes the snap, fades back. He starts going through his progression. His progression usually is I'm looking at the first wide receiver option. If that guy ain't there, I'm taking off. And he starts scrambling. Now, an elite quarterback, let's just say, for example, right now, Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, someone like that, or Tom Brady back in the day, they go through their list of progressions. They have wide receiver one, he's covered. Wide receiver two, he's covered. Wide receiver three, he's open, the ball's out. That's not Russell. He looks at one and then he makes a move. And that you can hear, and there were rumblings again coming out, annoyed Sean Payton. So Sean Payton really absolutely is annoyed by this entire experiment with Russell Wilson. On December 26th, he makes the move that he benches Russell Wilson when they have, at that point, they were 500. They needed to win their final two games to have any sort of a chance to get in the playoffs. He makes the move, I'm benching Russ. I'm done with this. And that really effectively ends his stay in Denver, right? I mean, the Broncos at that moment, the salary cap, the new contract, take in mind, hasn't even taken effect. So he's playing out his existing Seattle contract. So we're staring down at $245 million, that's going to be paid to Russell Wilson. And the Broncos make, in my opinion, the right move. If you're going to fail early. They're going to take a hit of $85 million to get rid of Russell Wilson, right? He never ends up playing in Denver with this new contract. It's a huge mark on kind of the franchise of where they're kind of going. I think they're cash rich. Think about the owners. We've got, the Penners out there that have extremely wealthy. They're the family of the Walton family that's backed by Walmart. So they are cash rich. They can definitely afford to pay out this money to Russell because he's still guaranteed close to $39 million this year. And then the following year, it's going to be an additional hit that they have to eat on the salary cap. But it was definitely needed to move forward with Russ to get rid of it, cut the ties. I think the NFL increasing the salary cap, excuse me, almost another 30 million definitely helped out the Broncos in this case. And so where do we really go from here, right? It's interesting. Russ never ends up playing a single down in Denver with his new contract. And you really got to wonder, why is George Payton, the general manager, still here? My hunch is this is just a hunch. He's here until the NFL draft, and then you're going to hear Sean Payton make an announcement that George Payton is no longer with the organization, right? In the series leading up to this, after that, it's now became official. Russell will become a free agent this year. He's now agreed to a new 1 year contract, completely team friendly for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he'll be a pretty good fit there. They've got some great talent, great defense, great coach. 1 year deal at just the veteran minimum of 1.2 million, and the Denver Broncos will be paying him close to $39 million this year not to be the quarterback. And to even make the drama more exciting in this upcoming season, the Denver Broncos will definitely be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers at Denver. And think about that. Denver Broncos are paying the salaries of Russell Wilson, the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Moves, repercussions that ended up happening with this decision to cut Russell. We had to cut Justin Simmons. I think that's the right decision. Justin, great player. Reality is they haven't won when he's been here. You need to save some money. Let him go to a contender. Jerry Jeudy, all the talent in the world. Kind of a bad egg when you watch him on the sidelines, right? He's always upset. Some of it rightfully deserved. He throws up his hands when he's running a route to signal, I'm open, Russ, and Russ doesn't see him. He's annoyed, so we ended up trading him for a fifth and a sixth round pick. And what do you know? The Denver Broncos are now $50 million under the cap after the cuts. And there was all this fear in the local media out here that we weren't going to be able to spend any sort of money in free agency. This is a complete rebuild. And I do think it is a rebuild, but they're not in the dire situation that you're hearing about. I think the Denver Broncos would love to be able to draft a quarterback in this year's draft. A lot of mock drafts have them going after Bo Nix if they stay at the 12 pick. Knowing Sean Payton and listening to him, guy's a little bit of a gambler. Don't be surprised if Sean Payton tries to get some more draft picks, maybe potentially trade a player and move up to try to capture someone like whose stock is rising heavily right now in JJ McCarthy. Topic number two, the Denver Nuggets. What can you say about the Denver Nuggets right now? I think it's incredibly clear that they're the best team in the NBA. I've thought this before Christmas. Now you think about the NBA season, doesn't really sort of take off until after Christmas. You've got games in the fall that are going on, and sure, they're all trying hard, but it really starts to get serious. They get more viewership, their viewership rises, better teams start rising up, really after that Christmas time frame. And over the last week or so, I believe Denver has really showcased why they still are the best team in the NBA, and they have to be the favorites to win back to back NBA championships. Nikola Jokic is just an incredible player to watch. You look at this guy when you first see him, and you think he reminds me in somewhat ways of a Larry Bird. Doesn't really look that athletic, doesn't really look that great. He's tall, big. He seems like he's not really running, but he actually is. It's just, I think, his size and his strength. But man, can this guy play? He is incredible when you watch him. There's a reason why he won the MVP award 2 years in a row. He makes the Denver Nuggets who they are. Now you combine Nikola Jokic with Jamal Murray, KCP, and Aaron Gordon, and you've got four players, and I'm leaving out Michael Porter Jr. as their fifth option. That's those four players are 100% bona fide superstars, and Michael Porter Jr. is close behind. They are an absolutely loaded starting five. A little sort of, I think, bench is has a thinness to it. They didn't really make a move at the NBA trade deadline rather, and I do still believe the Denver Nuggets are positioned to win it. It's clear when they play a really good team and the spotlight's on them that they show up. Let's just look at the last week, right? Denver goes into the LA Lakers, and national media says, "Hey, here's where the Los Angeles Lakers are going to showcase how good they are and how they're still a contender, etc." And what does Denver do? They end up doing a final score of 124 to 114. Jokic line, 35 points, 10 assists, 7 rebounds. Incredible line, right? Then March 7th, this is the big showcase. A lot of people, national media included, would say if they were to sit down and say, okay, who's going to be in the NBA Finals? It's going to be the Denver Nuggets versus the Boston Celtics. They are probably the two best teams in the NBA. I know Denver Nuggets are, and I do think in the East it's the Boston Celtics. What does Jokic do? He throws up a triple double, his 20th this season alone, of 32 points, 11 assists, 12 rebounds, and the Denver Nuggets go on to beat the Boston Celtics. And honestly, I don't think it was ever in doubt when they came in here that Denver wasn't going to beat the Celtics. Incredible, like when we think about their lineup, what they have. Those, most good teams would have three bona fide superstars. The Denver Nuggets have a starting five that is incredible. I do think they're going to go on a run. I think they set up absolutely perfectly to win another NBA championship. The Denver Nuggets just keep on doing what they do, and that's rolling. And Nikola Jokic is the best player on the planet by far. Topic number three, let's recap the Tottenham Hotspurs of the Premier League soccer. Tottenham needed to go in Sunday, and they are staring. Their goal is to get into the top four. That's a stated goal. Tottenham needs to get back. They have a big time stadium, the best stadium, arguably in the Premier League. It's a beautiful stadium there. It seats around 60,000 people. They've got a great training ground. They've got everything, and they've always had some big name players, and they haven't brought home a trophy in years. Their goal now is definitely to get into the top four. And they went in to Aston Villa on Sunday. It was an away game for them. Aston Villa is sitting in that fourth spot. Tottenham's at the fifth spot. And Tottenham really needed to show up. They really needed to show up. And what do? They go in and roll. And this was classic Ange ball. Their coach, Ange, is new this year. He's the new manager. And he created a system that is based off of Pep with Man City. And it's just all about, when you think about it, offense. The ball is moving, and it's always about let's be aggressive, let's get offensive. And with the players that they've been able to assemble here this year, you've got Son, who's the captain. He scores a goal. James Madison, he scores a goal. Timo Werner scores a goal. They are just on fire right now. And when they are playing like this, they are an incredibly tough team to beat. They now only sit 2 points behind Aston Villa for that fourth and final spot. Tottenham's got kind of a rough ending to their season. They're going to be playing the top three teams as they progress into the May time frame. They're going to be playing Manchester City, who, is the best team right now, sitting at the top of the table, so to speak. You've also got Liverpool and you've also got Arsenal. But when they're playing like this, they are a ton of fun to watch. Ange Ball has made Tottenham exciting. They're offensive minded again. Years past, they had much more of a defensive approach. You think about Conte, who was their coach for about a season and a half before he left. It was all kind of very boring to watch, very tough to get into. And Ange makes it just a ton of fun to be really get behind Tottenham. And then if you're looking for to really understand and get into soccer, they're a ton of fun to watch. And to close out today's episode is topic number 5. It's a restaurant I tried last week with my wife. This is one of our, it's I would say it's one of our favorites. We sort of forget about going there. This is Point Easy. Point Easy is located in the City Park West neighborhood of Denver. Great little restaurant. It's got a great patio, so when the weather gets nice, they open that up. The inside, super fresh, super modern, beautifully well designed, and the food is just really, really outstanding. Think Italian food with some traditional American type food. Great list of cocktails that they offer there. Really cozy. Great place to be. We went there last week. Happened to be Denver Restaurant Week where they were offering a four-course menu for $55. Highlights for us, kale salad. It was a kale salad and a lemon vinaigrette with Granny Smith apples and some candied walnuts. It was outstanding. The bolognese is just they use this homemade pasta that's very unique. The bolognese is just delicious. They had that. We also had a hanger steak and also a pork for kind of the main entree. The hanger steak had these incredibly creamy mashed potatoes with some broccolini, and then the pork was just cooked absolutely perfect over a polenta. It was delicious. And the portions, Denver Restaurant Week typically is you're going to get smaller portions. Their portions were enormous. We didn't even make it to the fourth and final course, which was a gelato. We passed. Point Easy, great restaurant in Denver. If you can try to get in there, definitely do. You will not be disappointed. This has been the Sports File, a 35-year reboot. Please like, subscribe, leave me a comment wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll talk to you next week.